Hello everyone, welcome back again to my YouTube channel, mgrahamsews. This video tutorial is for this super cute wallet called the Heartbreaker Wallet, and it's by K.Azcona Designs. It's a really quick and fun sew, and if you're like me and you have a bin full of smaller pieces of vinyl, cork, or faux leather, you could go digging through that bin and make this into a fun, scrappy project so you can use up all those scraps you may have that you're like, I don't really know what to use these for, but I'm going to keep them because they're not quite small enough to discard, but they're small enough to keep for another project. This is the perfect project because, as you can see, some of the pieces are a little bit smaller. So just a couple of things I wanted to mention before I get showing you this wallet. This is filmed like a sew along, so I show you everything on camera. There's no parts sped up, no parts cut out. The only time I may not show you something on camera is if it's something that's done in doubles or triples, for example. So if there's something that I do twice, I only show you how to do it once. I pause the camera and then I go off camera, so the second one, and then come back. I just don't feel that you need to sit and watch me do something more than once because that makes the tutorial a little too long. Another thing I wanted to make note of is that I don't show any pattern pieces, no rulers, cutting mats, nothing on camera, not even seam allowances I don't mention. And that's for the protection of the designer, but also because I film during testing, and if anything changes during testing, such as a measurement, you will not have any issues following along. It won't affect my tutorial because I haven't mentioned those in the video. So you will want to have your pattern near you so that you can follow along, so you'll be able to know what the measurements are when we're sewing the wallet together. So now let's discuss this wallet and show you some of the features. So you'll notice here it's got this cute little heart. This is the snap tab that helps hold the wallet closed. So that's the front. On the back we have a little zipper pocket, so perfect for coins. If you want to put coins in here, you could even put, if you have your receipts, you could even put your receipts in there if you wanted, if you didn't want to put your coins in the back there. When you open the wallet, you'll see you have an ID pocket, and then you have two other card slots above it. On this side, you have 3 card slots, so I'll show you closer. So there's one here that my finger is going into. 1, 2, 3. And then you have bill slots here, or again, you could put receipts or anything that you want to put in here. Sometimes, you get coupons or whatever from stores, so you can put that inside there as well. And then you snap it all closed, and you have your cute little half wallet again, half heart. And this could match with the Heartbreaker bag as well. You can make a cute little set. It's really fun to make. Like I said, it's not a long sew. It may look like it's going to be longer because on video I do go into explaining a lot and I don't leave any information out, but it's a really fun sew and quick. So if you have something like craft markets coming up and you're looking for something that you can make really quick and maybe use up those scraps that you have, this is the perfect choice. So there's the Heartbreaker, and you'll notice that I have the same material cut for my second one, and that's just because as I was cutting this with my Cricut, I just kept going so that I could just have the 2 done and I didn't have to cut out a second one another time. I just did it all at once. So everything's the same for the wallet I'm going to make on camera, except for my zipper pull is a little bit different. So you'll see I have 2 different zipper pulls. That's the only thing different, but everything else is the same. The other thing I wanted to mention is I don't use edge coat, but instead what I do is I take a Sharpie and I color on the edges of my wallet here. And to make sure that it doesn't rub off, what I do is I take and I still need to do that, but I take a damp paper towel and I just run it along to make sure I get any of the excess coloring that hasn't really dried or soaked in, and I run it along so that it doesn't come off, and that's what I do. Now, always do a test before you do that, just to make sure that it doesn't do any damage or anything to the vinyl you're using. I always take a small little piece and do a little test, and I leave it for a day or 2 just to see how it reacts to it, and then I'll take the damp cloth and I'll rub it around the edges just to make sure that nothing comes off, because as you can see, even now there's nothing that came off my fingers when I touched it, and I haven't even done this with the damp cloth yet. But that's what I like to do because I don't have that edge coat, so I like to do that when I have any materials that need to stay raw. Sometimes I don't, like with this one, I may not do that. I may just leave it just so that they do look a little bit different, but that's just an option I wanted to give you for what I do on the edges of my vinyls. Now again, definitely do a test just to see how it reacts and make sure there's no damage that gets done. So let's get started making our wallet. So the first step is your snap tab. And you'll have 2 pieces, and you'll have a front and a back, and you need to find which one is the back. So the back will go like this. The heart is on this side, so if I'm looking at it myself, with it right sides up. My heart is on the right hand side. Now I did fuse my interfacing to this side, and that's just because when I cut this out I forgot to flip it over on my Cricut, so the sticky side was the other way, and it should be on the front piece, but mine's on the back, but that's okay. It's not the end of the world. It all ends up the same because I even did that on this one and it all works out the same, so not to worry. So I'm going to close that. Oh, and the other thing is I used red stitching on this, so you can see my red stitching. For this one, I'm going to use black thread for this. So once you have the back snap tab, what you need to do is you need to punch the hole for where your snap is going to go. So I'm just going to make the hole right now, and I'm going to use my snap. And I think for this one, I used black. Yep, so I'm going to use a red one this time. So you're installing the male side of the snap tab. So the male side is the side that's going to have the little nub. And you know what? I can't use red because I only have 2 males, no females. So I'm going to have to use black. So when you're installing it, you want this flat end of the snap, so the cap side, to be on the wrong side, and the other half, so the male half, to be on the same side as your vinyl, so on the right side of the vinyl. So snap on the wrong side, snap, cap on the wrong side, and male side of the snap on the right side. And I'm just going to use my little handheld press here. And I push it down on my table. I just find that helps hold it. So now that's all installed. Now what we need to do is take the front piece and we need to lay it on top of the back piece. But you want to use some double-sided tape to help hold it in place. So I'm going to get out my double-sided tape. And I'm just going to place a strip down the center, keeping it out of the seam allowances. And you may be wondering what I'm doing with my tape here, but what I do is I fold it back onto itself, and then I pull the piece that I folded back off, and then right here, this little, it's like a tab. It has no tape on it at all, and that just makes it easier for when I go to pull the paper backing off. So if you look, I grab that little tab, and I just pull it off, and no problems at all. So now we're going to lay the front piece on top, carefully aligning everything. So if you have to lift it up and readjust, definitely do that. Take your time with this. You want it all lined up nicely. So just like that. So it's all lined up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all the way around the snap tab. And you're going to start and stop where it is suggested to in the pattern. So you can start in the pattern, I believe, I'm just trying to find where it is. So if you find it difficult to pivot at the top, begin and end your stitching at the top, and you'll leave long thread tails here when you start. So when you start, you won't backstitch, you'll just start stitching, leave long thread tails, then you'll pull them through after, and what you'll do is you'll be pulling them through the center here. You won't pull them through to the back, you'll pull them through the layers to tie them off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start stitching over here and backstitch, because when we make the wallet, that end part is tucked in between the layers, so you're not going to see any of my backstitching there at all. Oh, maybe I should thread my needle. That might be a good idea. Now, if you're worried about skip stitches or anything, it is always good to use a bigger needle, or if you have a humper jumper as well, which I don't own one of those, but a humper jumper or even a walking foot can help get through any of the bulk if your machine struggles. And I'm using my Teflon foot because I am sewing a vinyl. So I'm at that corner, the first corner, and I'm just pivoting around the corner. Oops. And sometimes you have to take a smaller stitch just to get into the corners that you need to get into, and that's okay. So coming around the curve, what I like to do is with my needle down, lift my presser foot up, pivot my material a bit, take a stitch, and then keep going around that way. So needle down, presser foot up, presser foot back down, pivot, take a stitch. And I do that all the way around just to get a really nice curve. And remember, you've got that snap there, so you may want to use a zipper foot here to help you get around where that snap is. So for example, my snap is caught here, so I'm going to, there we go. And it would have been better if I sewed with the snap the other way. I don't know why I didn't. So I'm still coming around that corner, or the curve, sorry. And now I'm on the straight edge, all the way down. I can go a little bit faster here because it's a straight edge. Back stitch. Oops. Cut your threads. You don't want peekaboo threads later. And that's how it looks when you have it all stitched up. So we have our snap tab all done. And I went around the corner here. I think this, I'm gonna have to fix this. My thread got a little wonky here on the back. There we go. All right. There we are. So there we go. So now we'll put the snap tab off to the side. So put it somewhere for now. I'm just going to move this stuff out of the way so it's not too distracting. Now what we need to do is grab our zipper and our zipper pocket pieces. So that'll be these two pieces here. And the first thing we're going to do is take our zipper pocket piece, and this is G. This will be piece G, and you're going to lay it so it is right sides up. So I'm using a canvas here. So one side is sort of slippery and one side has that rougher feeling. So I know the rougher-ish feeling, I guess you could call it, is going to be the right side. Although I guess I could use this side too if I really wanted to, inside preference. We're going to lay it right sides up, and I'm going to lay my zipper right sides up. So the wrong side of my zipper is against the pretty side of my material. Clip it along the raw edge. So the top edge of your zipper pocket, you want to clip the zipper to the top edge. So just like that. And now I'm going to sew along that edge using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And when I approach where my zipper pull is, I'm going to move it out of the way just to help so that my zipper foot can get past it. But also, if you notice where the zipper pull is, it creates like a bump in the zipper tape. So when you move the zipper pull out of the way, it helps keep the zipper tape nice and straight. So sometimes we have those wavy zippers. If you don't move your zipper pull out of the way because you're using a zipper foot, it could cause that waviness in the zipper tape. So now what we need to do is press these fabrics away from the zipper. So now when you look at it, your zipper is now on the wrong side of the fabric and your fabric is on the right side. So now what we're going to do, and I know this isn't in the pattern, but I'm going to top stitch this down just to help hold it flat because I'm using this canvas and I'm finding it's popping back up on me. So I'm just going to top stitch this down right close to the raw edge of the zipper, and that ensures that this stitching won't be seen when we go to attach this inside the pocket. So there's one edge. Again, take your G piece, lay it right sides up, zipper right sides up as well, line up the side edges of your pocket so that everything is nicely lined up. Clip it in place, just like that. So my side edges here, I'm making sure are lined up, and right now the right sides of the pockets are touching. And again, sew that with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Zip your zipper pull out of the way to help keep that zipper tape nice and straight. I need to move my garbage bag closer. There we go. And again, I'm going to press these fabrics away from the zipper. Just like that. And then I'm going to top stitch again to help hold that out of the way. Now, there is another option. You could sew this zipper tape without the zipper pull already on. And what you'll do after you're done is you'll add your zipper pull back onto your zipper tape once you have both your zipper pocket pieces attached. And I have a helpful tutorial on my YouTube channel, which I'll link below, showing you how to put a zipper pull back onto your zipper tape using the method I use, which was with a fork. And it's really helpful and quick and easy, so I'll link that below in the description in case you have left your zipper pull off, because sometimes it's when you're making these kind of pockets, I just find it's easier to have the zipper pull off and then add it at the end. So now what we need to do is add a piece of double-sided tape to the top and bottom here. So I'm going to do that. Along the top and bottom edge of the zipper. And I'm going to show you a bit of a different method of construction for this zipper pocket than what's given in the pattern, but I will still walk you through how it is done in the pattern so that you do know how to do it in case you want to follow along in the pattern. It's sort of similar, but a couple of steps are just a wee bit different, and it's just, for me, I find it's a little bit easier, a few less steps. I did discuss this with Kim already, and she is okay with me showing it because there are a few tutorials that have been filmed for this. So she is okay with me showing this, but I will still walk you through how she does it. So what you need to do, if you haven't already, is cut the rectangular hole out of your front outer main A piece, and you want to make sure that hole is on, when I'm looking at it, is on the right side, or on the left side, so that when you close your wallet, it goes onto the back of the wallet, just like this. So when you're cutting it out, make sure that that cutout is going to be on the left side. When you're looking at the right side of the wallet, it's on the left, so just like this. You want to really make sure that it's on that side. So then what you're going to do is you're going to take this and you're going to lay it over the zipper, over top of your zipper. Now, you want to make sure your zipper pull goes to the top when it's closed. So I'm laying this right now where it's down, and my zipper pull is closing to the right, which I know when I lay this down, it will go up towards the top of the wallet. So I'm going to center this now over top of the zipper tape, center the opening, and I'm just trying to keep my zipper pull out of the way. And I'm going to center this over top, and I'm just going to see what the clearance is, because you want to have room on this side, but you don't want it to be too short where you don't get the whole zipper, if that makes sense when you're sewing at the top. Yeah. So you want to make sure it comes up high enough on the top here so that when you're sewing this short straight edge here, you catch the zipper and you don't miss it. So get everything all nicely centered. Press it in place. And that's how it looks so far from the right side and the wrong side. That's what it looks like. And again, my zipper pull goes up to the top. Now, if you don't mind when you're holding your wallet on which way it goes, if it goes this way, if it comes down when it's closed, I mean, that's a personal preference, but I just think when I'm carrying it, I'm going to be holding it like this majority of the time, or holding it like this. So I still like it when I'm opening it and getting my cards so that my zipper pull goes up to the top. Just going to close that. So there you go. Now, what Kim has us do in the pattern here is the bottom, when you look at your wallet, she shows you what the bottom is, and this is the bottom edge where the smaller part is. So where the zipper is, the zipper pocket, that's the bottom edge, and this big area here is the top. So if you want to make sure that you don't cause yourself any confusion, you can mark a T here so you know where the top is. Put a little T here. So what she has you do is she has you stitch along the bottom here with no back stitching. You leave long thread tails and stitch along the bottom here of the pocket. And then you leave long thread tails, then you tie them, pull them through and tie them off in the back. And that's with the pocket open like this. So leaving it open, stitch it along just the bottom. Then what you do is you flip it to the wrong side and you bring this top edge of your pocket down. So you bring this down to meet the bottom and you'll pin it in place. Then what you'll do is flip it over and you'll start where you stopped over here. You'll stitch up the short edge across this top long edge and back down this short edge here, stopping where you started or stopped previously. Leave long thread tails, pull them both through to the wrong side, tie them off, and then you have your whole box stitched around. And then when we get to this part, I'll show you what to do with the rest of it. But what I do is instead is leave this completely open and I stitch all the way around this zipper opening. So I'm going to do that. Stitch all the way around the entire zipper opening. So I'm going to leave long thread tails because I want to pull them through and tie them off to the back. So if you've never done that, I am going to show you that here. And don't forget to move that zipper pull out of the way because that zipper pull is there now. We can't take it out. So you want to move it out of the way. And always stop with your needle down inside your material so that when you do lift up your presser foot or if you accidentally move your material, you won't move it right off your stitching or right out from under your presser foot. So I'm coming back to where I started and I'm going to stop where I started, lift my needle up, pull long thread tails, and then just like that. Now, what I do is I pull on the back threads, which causes a little loop to come up. So there's a little loop, so I stick the end of my scissors, the sharp end of my scissors, making sure my scissors are closed too, by the way. You don't want the scissors open. And I'm just going to pull these two threads, clip them over here so I don't keep grabbing at them. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I see the loop, pull it through, just like that. So now I have 4 threads. If you look, I've got 4 threads here in the back. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to put them in pairs. And I like to make sure too that they're all the same length. It's just easier when I'm tying them. So in pairs and tie them off. Now, I've never had an issue with these coming untied, and I do knot them a few times. But if you're a little bit concerned, you could definitely add some glue over top just to really help hold it in place. And I just use Beacon 3-in-1 glue. Like I said, I've never had an issue with them coming untied, maybe because I knot them so many times. And I'm also careful with how tight I'm pulling, because if you pull too tight, you could break your threads, and then that means you have to basically go and unpick all your stitching and redo it. But that's how that looks. So it's stitched all the way around, and I know you might not be able to see it on camera, but it's stitched all the way around. I just want to make sure my camera didn't unfocus. Sometimes it does. And when I zip this up, it closes up towards the top, and then there's the pocket opening. And I'm just going to trim that thread just a wee bit more. There we go. Now, normally yours would already be brought down to the bottom. So your top would be brought down to the bottom, and you would have stitched that short edge up the top edge and down this side edge. I didn't do it that way, but it's the same method. Now what you want to do, no matter which one you've done here, is clip the side edges of the pocket all the way around the side edges. And I'm just going to move my zipper pull into more of the center of the zipper pocket, just so that it's out of my way here. Now you'll notice that the bottom pocket is longer than the top pocket, and that's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to trim those pieces so that they are even. So you could take this to your cutting mat and use your rotary cutter and ruler to cut this. I'm just using my scissors. The other thing we need to do is we need to cut that so that this isn't hanging in the seam allowance. So you want to cut it out of the seam allowance. So I'm going to put a clip over here, and I'm going to actually just follow where my interfacing is. So just like that, I'm following along where my interfacing was to cut that. And I'm going to cut the other side as well, following along where the interfacing was, just like that. So you'll have it so it'll be shaped like your heart, and it stays out of your seam allowance, so you're not going to be sewing over it when you sew the bag together. And if you're finding that your zipper is sort of in the way, you definitely want to trim that. If it's a little bit too long and it's in the way, trim the zipper so it's not within the seam allowance and you're not hitting it when you're sewing the final bag together, or sorry, final wallet. Now with these all clipped together on the sides, so I've trimmed it down and it's all clipped. Now we need to sew down the side, down this little edge here, across the bottom and all the way up and around, moving the exterior out of the way. So I just do this, I pull it back out of the way, and I have some double-sided tape here which I can peel off my zipper. I do like to leave the double-sided tape. I don't completely rip it off. I just peel it back and stick it down to the exterior. And that's just so when I am done stitching, I can stick this back down and it'll help hold it in place. So using the seam allowance given in the pattern, sew your zipper pocket. And if you've used a top stitch length for stitching around that zipper window opening, you want to switch back to your regular stitch length that you use for stitching structural seams. And don't worry if your stitching's not super perfect, no one's gonna see it. We won't know when the bag is finished what it looked like. So if your stitching gets a little bit wonky like mine sort of did here, it's all good. No one's gonna never know, because once this is done and completed, it will be completely out of the seam allowances. I mean completely hidden, sorry. And I'm cutting that a little bit more so it's out of the seam allowance. I think it would have been okay, but the goal is to try and keep everything for that zipper and all that extra bulk out of our seam allowances, so when we're putting the wallet together, we don't have any bulk there. So now our wallet has our zipper pocket for the exterior. So we have this cute little zipper pocket for your coins, and the zipper zips up. Now what we need to do, now that that is done, you need to, if you haven't already, transfer your hole for where your snap tab is going to be snapped in place. And I've already done that, and I know you can't really see it, but it's right here. I'm just going to kind of color around it. It's right there on the wrong side. And what I do, because I'm using these cam snaps, is I just take my little hole punching tool and I just push it through like I did with my snap earlier. And then again, grab one of my snaps, just black. So now we need to grab the female portion of the snap. And the same thing, your cap needs to be on the wrong side of the material, and your female half of the snap needs to be on the right side of the material. So just like that. Now I'm going to take my punch, or my press, and because there's Decoville, it makes it a little bit harder to get that in there, but you can do it. push down. And that's why I use my table, because I can push down harder. And just make sure your snap can snap. Now you can use a magnetic snap here. I'm just choosing to use these cam snaps. I just feel like they're a little bit more secure because they feel like they snap tighter than a magnetic snap does for me. So I prefer the cam snaps anytime I can use them. They're nice and strong and they hold nicely. So there we go. My snap is installed there on my front. So now we're going to put this off to the side for now. And now we need to work on the left pocket. And this is the left pocket here. So if you haven't already, you'll want to go ahead and cut out the card slots as well as the opening here for your ID window. So once you have the ID window cut out and your card slots cut out, you're going to grab your, I want to make sure I call this the right word. This is the ID window, so piece E out of your clear vinyl. Just something on it there. There we go. So you're going to grab your ID window and some of your double-sided tape, and we're going to place double-sided tape around the ID window. So around the edges of the ID window on the wrong side, and you want to line it up on the edges because you want to make sure that it stays out of the ID window opening when we do attach it. So place it all the way around. Sometimes it sticks to my nails more than it does anything else. I think it's the nail polish. And then I end up with like little pieces taken out on the edges of my nails. Like here I have a piece taken off. It's kind of funny. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the paper backing from my double-sided tape. So I'm removing all the paper backings just like that. Now you want to flip this over to the wrong side. And you want to press this down, lining it up with the top window with the bottom card slot. So here's the bottom card slot here. So you have the 3, 1, 2, 3. So the bottom card slot is the same card slot that you'll be using to slip this into the ID window. So line it up. Centering it as best you can. So just like that, it's all centered there, it's all lined up. Press it nice and flat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch this down all around the entire opening. And you're going to leave long thread tails and pull them through and tie them off in the back. If you want, you can back stitch, that's a personal preference. But what I do is I leave the long thread tails and pull them through to the back so that you don't see any back stitching at all. So same thing as before, start and don't back stitch. And then you need to take one more stitch. So I'm just stitching all the way around right now. And these thread tails that I left, I always like to pull them over going towards me, just so I don't stitch over them. There's my long thread tails. Make the loops by pulling on the back one. Pull them through, put them in pairs, and they seem to be about the same length, so we're good to go. Tie them off. And you'll find that this is the part that takes the longest, is the threads, pulling them through and tying them off, but it's it's totally worth it because it gives such a nice clean finish rather than all the back stitching. I really like the clean finish that it gives. So there you go. It's all stitched in place. You can see it better on this side, stitched all the way around in place. Now what we need to do is we need to place, and I just want to make sure the, what is it called here? ID window lining to the back side, to the back side of this to cover that up so that when you slip this in place or you use your pocket, you won't just be slipping it in between the layers and lose it. So you have this ID lining here that we need to place down. So I'm going to place it here. And we want to place some double-sided tape all the way around. So I'm trying to find where the beginning is, right here. So you're making sure it's going to be placed right side up. So your double-sided tape is going to be on the right side of the ID window. And I just need to move my little, there we go. And refocus my camera. Sorry, I had to move my pattern over so I can read. So she has a measurement for where this is going to be placed. So after I get this tape put on, I'm going to pause the camera and make that measurement, and I'm going to make some other measurements while I'm off camera, just any measurements that I can make to help so that in the next few steps I'm not pausing the camera quite as much. Don't worry about it if you haven't made those extra markings yet, because I will tell you when you need to make them. So don't worry too much about those markings just yet. So I have the double-sided tape on there. I'm just grabbing out another roll of double-sided tape. So I'm going to pause the camera because we need to make a marking below the middle here of the card slot here. So you're making the marking, I just want to make sure, yeah, below the middle card slot. So you have two card slots. You have the top, the second, and the third. The third is where your ID window is going to go in. So you need to make a marking below this middle pocket here. So I'm going to go off camera, I'm going to go do that, and then I'll come back and we will continue on. And I'm also going to make other markings that I need to make on this, just so I have them done and I'm not pausing the camera quite so much, because as I mentioned, I don't show rulers or any measurements on camera, so I will, for this tutorial, have to pause a lot. But it won't really be so terrible for you because you're not watching when I'm paused. It just one easy flowing video. So I'm going to go do that and I'll come back and we will continue on. All right, so I've got the markings all made and the double-sided tape on the right side of my lining. So now I'm going to peel back the paper backing from my double-sided tape. And we're placing it at that marking that was given in the pattern. So I'm just placing it there. Now, some of this is going to hang off the edge of your material, and that's okay because we're going to trim that away later so that it's not there anymore. So now what we're going to do is we're going to then stitch around the edge here using the seam allowance that is given in the pattern, and you're going to use the measurement, and I just want to make sure. Yeah, there is a measurement. So the measurement from the edge here of the previous stitching over. So I need to go make those marks. I didn't do that on this side because I need to use chalk and I know it's going to wipe off when I'm flipping it around. So from the pocket piece top stitching that you did, you're going to make a measurement over from that top stitching, and then you're going to stitch all the way around. So I'm going to go off camera again and I'm going to go make those markings with my chalk. So I use a Clover Choco for that, and I'm going to make the mark. And again, it's from the previous stitching, so not from the edge, from your previous stitching. And then you're going to stitch on top of those lines you drew so that you can know where it is and have really nice, accurate stitching. So I'm going to go make those marks and I'll be right back. All right, so I've made that little box that we have to stitch on, and I've used the measurements that are given in the pattern for where we're going to stitch. So I've got the mark here, down across the bottom, up across the side, and across the top above this bottom slot. So now I'm going to stitch all the way around, and I'm going to leave long thread tails. So I'm not going to back stitch, and you know what? I'm going to do that at the bottom. So no back stitching again. If you want to, though, you can definitely back stitch if you're, you know, not concerned about back stitching at all. And you want to stitch directly on top of that line that you made with your chalk or whatever marking tool you used. And we're pivoting at each corner. And what I'm doing is I'm sort of rocking my needle when I get to that corner. Usually I would take one stitch just to make sure. I would lessen my stitch length and take one stitch. But here I'm just making sure that my needle caught my bobbin before I start sewing that corner. And I'm also checking to make sure that everything lines up nicely. There we go. Long thread tails again. Pull them through, tie them off. So put them in pairs and tie them off. Just like that. And one more just for good luck. Now what you need to do here is we need to trim away any of this excess lining here that is going to be in our seam allowance. So we want to trim it all away. So you can trim as close to your stitching as you can get if you want, because that's not necessary anymore. Don't trim the top edge, leave that there, but I'm trimming down the sides. And I'm using my duckbill scissors so that I don't cut my exterior by accident. So I've trimmed it completely away, so now it's not in the seam allowance, and we can slip a card in here and your card will fit nicely. I've tried it with the other one and took it with my pictures and everything when I tried it. Took my pictures, I mean, with a card slot in there. Now you need to make some marks on the back. So I've already made the mark here from the middle slot down. You'll make a mark. So I've already got that marking made and I just want to make sure it's accurate. Yep, I've already made that mark, and a mark at the top above the top card slot. So you're going to make the mark from the top card slot up, but we're also going to put double-sided tape at those marks, and also double-sided tape below the middle here and below the top. So it's always fun trying to find the beginning of the tape. So put the double-sided tape along there. So double-sided tape, I'll show you how it looks. Below the middle card slot, below the top card slot, and at that line we drew above the top card slot, so above it. So you have 4 strips of double-sided tape. So one on top of the ID lining, one below the middle card slot, one below the top, and one up here above the top lining. So now, grabbing your piece of ribbon or material that you've chosen to use for your card slots, you're going to take this and you're going to place it onto your, this is the left side, on the back. So you're going to place it under the middle card slot. And there's a mark we need to make that is going to be from the middle card slot down, and that's approximately where you're going to put, or that's not approximately, that is where you're going to put it. So measure from the middle card slot down, and then that is where you're going to line up the bottom edge here, the bottom short edge of your material you use. So I'm just going to pause the camera, I'm going to make that mark and then come back and we'll continue on. Alrighty, so I've made that mark, just so you can see I've made the mark there below the middle card slot. So now what I'm going to do is remove that tape backing from the underneath my middle card slot. And as I mentioned, I'm going to place this, so you'll watch, it's going to seem a little bit funky the way we do it, so it seems a little bit tricky, but it does work, trust me. It's kind of cool. So what you do is you lay this so that your short edge is at the line, making sure you're covering the holes on either side as well. So you know there's those little holes where your card slots are. You want to make sure. So right now, that's what I mean by it's a little bit funky. It seems weird because we have this pointing up and you know we're making card slots. And that's right. You want it pointing up off the top edge of your material, because then what we do is we then take this after and we fold it down like this, and that'll help create the first card slot. So now with that stuck there, what we need to do is we need to turn it over and we need to top stitch between the circles. And I do need to pause the camera again, I'm sorry, but there's a measurement for where we need to top stitch, and I'm going to make my lines now underneath both those openings just to make sure that it's done and I don't have to pause the camera too much. But you need to make a mark below that opening, that middle card slot opening, and there is a measurement given. So again, you'll see how it looks like it's sticking up. It's holding my heart this way. That's right. That's what you want. You want it to be sticking up off the top. So I'm going to go make that marking and then I'll come back and we will continue on. Okay, so that mark is made. Now I can stitch directly on top of it between those two circles, and I'm not going to back stitch. I don't want any back stitching. Make sure the material is flat underneath. Long thread tails. Pull them through and tie them off in the back. And you could definitely use back stitching here again if you want. Like I said, this is the part I find takes me the longest, is all the tying off. But if you want, you could back stitch here. I find it takes me long because my hands also don't really cooperate well sometimes. So I'm just tying all the threads. And if this part is boring where I'm tying threads, please definitely fast forward the tutorial. Like I said, it doesn't take as long as it looks like it takes to make, because I go slow and I go through every step very thoroughly. But if you're back stitching as well, you won't have any of this time where you're tying anything off. I'm using a black thread. I could have technically back stitched. It wouldn't show as much. There we go. All right. Now that that is tied off, now what we need to do is have this flipped over so you're looking at the wrong side, and remove the paper backing from your double-sided tape down here on the bottom of the ID window lining. So remove that paper backing. And you're going to bring this down. So now you're bringing it down towards where that tape is. So you can see here, and I'm folding it at the lining and I'm pressing it so it's nice and flat, just like that. And for my other one that I made, the one I showed you off at the beginning here, I actually used the ribbon that is suggested to use in the pattern. I used ribbon for this one. And for this one here, I'm using the canvas, so the same thing I'm using for my lining of my pockets. I just used the canvas. So now, with that pressed down and creased with my fingers, now what we need to do is we need to take this and bring it back up so it sticks up off the edge of the fabric again. And I want to make sure my sides stay all lined up nicely, so I'm pressing it with my fingers. And I'm going to remove this double-sided tape backing here from the bottom of the top middle card slot, and I'm going to press it in place just like that. just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch along the bottom here again, just like we did here, using the measurement given in the pattern. Now, it is recommended that you try a card slot, and I know that this works because I've already done this with this wallet here. So I know these measurements work, so I don't need to use a card. I also don't have a card down here. Let's see if I can find something. I don't have a card down here, so I can't measure it. But I did do this already earlier, so I do know it works. So I'm going to stitch across that bottom card slot, right on top of the mark I made. No back stitching. I almost hit the thread cutter. Ooh, that would have been a mess. All right. The nice thing about when you tie off, I should mention too, is if I did hit the thread cutter there, it wouldn't have totally been the end of the world. I would have just had to unpick a few stitches back and then pull it through and tie it off. Once I had it pulled through and tied off, I would start in that same hole that it stopped in, so wherever I pulled back to, and then just continue stitching all the way along to the end, pull my threads through both ends and tie them off. So you'd end up having like 4 knots within that area. But that's just what's nice about when you're pulling threads through to tie them off and there's no back stitching, that you can do that and you can just start. And even if you do have back stitching, sorry, at the beginning or end, if you end up running out of, say, bobbin thread or anything, or your thread breaks accidentally, just unpick those few stitches and pull them through and tie it off in the back, and then start stitching and then back stitch when you get to the end, and go back over and pull those threads through and tie them off in the back. I'm hoping that's making sense. It's helpful too when you're using it for, say, a strap or something, and sometimes my bobbin, sometimes I forget and my bobbin runs out, so I do that with a strap. Now what we need to do is we need to make a mark from this bottom fold here, and we need to then take this and fold it down to where that bottom mark is. So same thing we did before, and then bring it back up. So I need to go off camera and I'm going to make that mark from the bottom of this fold here. So the one that we just brought down and folded, we're going to make a mark from the bottom of that fold up. So I'm going to go off camera, I'm going to do that and come back. Okay, so I've got that mark made and I placed some double-sided tape at that mark. So there it is, and I've placed some double-sided tape at that mark. So, I didn't press my double-sided tape down very well. So now what we're going to do is remove the paper backing and repeat that same process we did previously. Fold this down, line up those side edges. I'm all about making sure those side edges are lined up. And I really press this down with my fingers, and then press it down, and then bring it back up towards the top and press this edge again. Remove the paper backing from that top edge. So we're going to fold this up again. So now they are right sides together. You're kind of creating like mountains and valley folds here, but I've folded it up so you have one fold and then another fold. So now we have this second fold here at the bottom. You can see it there. And now we're going to flip it over and making sure everything is flat. There's a mark that you need to make at the top of this top card slot. So I'm going to go off camera again. I'm going to make the mark so it's above the top card slot and across. So I'm going to go do that and come back, and then we'll stitch above. Right, so I have that mark made. Now I'm going to stitch above. Again, no back stitching. I'll leave long thread tails and tie it off. And again, it's sticking up off the top of my wallet right now. Pull both threads through to the back and tie them off. And just be careful how tight you're pulling these because you don't want to break your thread as you're pulling them tight. I think I mentioned that already. If you do, same thing I mentioned before, pull through threads a little bit and tie them off. And you can use, like I was saying earlier, some glue here on these threads if you want, just to help ensure that they don't come undone. I pulled that, but thankfully the knots were already made. So there we are. I've stitched it. It's stuck to the top. I'm just going to wipe all the chalk off. Just use the cuff of my cardigan here. Dust all the chalk off. So there it is. No back stitching. It's all attached. Now we need to cut this piece off, and I'm just going to cut it right in line with that line I made earlier. So there we go. I cut it right with that line, and we have our card slots made. So we have one card slot here, middle card slot, and then your ID slot. Now what we need to do, and I'm just trying to find it, we need to get our right pocket. So now our right pocket is here, and this is the same method that we just did for this side, except there's no ID window, but it's the exact same method that we did. So you're using the measurements given in the pattern to place this down. So I'm going to do this. I'll show you again just for the first one. I might actually show you them all instead, but if you don't want to watch this again, just definitely fast forward through, but it's all the same method as we did for this side, except for, like I said, there's no ID window. And you may be wondering about this too, because I know I did at first, and I'm like, that's interesting. These sides aren't closed off. But you don't have to worry, because when you slide a card in here, it doesn't go anywhere because your card will stop at the edge of the wallet. So you don't lose it. I have tried it already. You don't have anything to worry about there. So now what we need to do is we need to turn it over, and we need to place that double-sided tape along the bottom edges of these pockets, and then one above and one down below here, and there's a measurement given in the pattern for where. So I'm going to go off camera, I'm going to make all those marks, and I'm even going to make marks on this side, so that, because I can do that now. I won't be able to make any of the marks that we have to make on this piece, but I'm going to make the marks, all the markings that I can on this, and then I will come back and we will continue on. All right, so now that I've made all those markings that I can, and I've placed the tape at the places that were mentioned, so from the bottom card slot down, I made a mark. I also made another mark underneath for where we're going to place that first piece of material. And then I placed double-sided tape underneath each of the card slot openings and one above here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the paper backing from the double-sided tape that is under the bottom card slot. I'm going to take my material, whatever you're using, so you may be using ribbon or another material, and I'm going to place it at that mark below the bottom card slot. So lining it up, and I'm going to make sure it's as centered as I can get it. Press it down, flip it over, and then we need to stitch along the bottom edge using the measurement given in the pattern. No back stitching again. So stitch along. And I almost back stitched there again. Wouldn't be terrible. It is black thread on a black vinyl. And I heard Buddy coming down the stairs, so I imagine she's going to be up to visit. So tying my threads off, and I'm going to try to do this one a little bit faster so that the tutorial doesn't take too much longer. I might just show you this first one here and then go off and finish the rest, because it does get pretty repetitive. And it's the same thing as what we did on the first side. It's just there is no ID pocket here, but it's the same thing that we did for the other card slots. All right, so now that we have that stitched, what we need to do is remove the paper backing from the double-sided tape here at the bottom of this card slot. And I don't know what, there it is. The tab was on the other side. Hi. We're going to fold this down to where that line is and where the paper is, the double-sided tape is. So just like that. So now it comes down to the bottom, and then we're going to bring it back up. So bring it back up, and then you want to remove the paper backing from below that middle card slot. Again, making sure your side edges stay aligned when you bring it back up. So you've brought it down, stuck it to the tape, and then folded it back up. So now it looks like that. And again, we're going to stitch under that middle card slot opening. I don't know what Buddy's doing. There's a noise in the other room. Pulling the threads through, tie them off, and then we're just going to repeat that whole process for the remaining one. Your threads, and then same thing, we're going to make a mark from the bottom of this folded edge up, and then that's where we're going to fold this down to, and then bring it back up. So you fold it down, press it in place, bring it back up to the bottom of the top card slot, and then repeat that again. So I'm going to go off camera because, like I said, it's the same process as what we did for this, including when we get to this final one where you bring it up to the top. So I'm going to go finish this off camera, and then I'll come back. I just don't feel you need to watch me keep doing this over and over and over again. It's the same process as we did, again, like I said, for this one. So I'll go do that, and then when I come back, this will all be done and we can continue on. So I've stitched the rest of the pockets just like we did with the first one. So I've done that all. I'm just going to move Buddy out of the way. She came up to visit. So sometimes, oh, sorry. Sometimes she likes to lay on this, but she sees her other sister is down here. So she's going to go see her. So I've stitched all those pockets. So there we go. That's what they look like. We have 3 card slots on the back, 3 folds on the back. So there's your first card slot, your second, and your third. And I also trimmed away the top edge here. So we have a little bit left. I'm just going to throw that in the trash. We don't need that again. So now that the card slots are done, what we need to do, oh, and one thing I wanted to mention, before you make your card slots, if you want, she does have instructions for adding a little label. I don't have any labels, so I didn't add one, but you can add one, and she does instruct in the pattern where to do it. So if you forgot to do it, you can easily just pull this back right now because it's just held on with double-sided tape, and you can move it back and you can add your label now, and then just take this and tape it back down with the double-sided tape. So I'm just scrolling through so we can get to the next step. So now we have these 2 assembled card slot pieces. So what we need to do is take the left, lay it so that it is right sides up, and then you're going to take the piece here that is mirrored from your contrasting material. Now I used the same material, but you're going to take that material and you're going to place it so it is right sides down. So it's going to be pretty sides touching. Clip it together along the straight edge, and then we're going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. So you'll want to sew along the straight edge only using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And if you have your stitch length set to a length you like to use for top stitching, you'll want to change that back to your stitch length for structural seams now. So just stitch straight up the straight edge. Trim your threads. And we're going to repeat that for the other one. So the right hand side, again, flip it over, pretty sides touching, clip it together along the straight edge. And I like to make sure that my top edges are aligned. And then stitch along that edge. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to flip these so that they are wrong sides together. But before I do that, I like to apply a piece of, and I went a little bit wonky here. I'm just going to fix this. I can see my stitching went a little bit off, probably because of my card slots. Yeah. All right, back to where I was. So my stitching went a little off. I just corrected it. Now, what I like to do is add a piece of double-sided tape along the seams because I'm using a material that I can't really press very well. And as I mentioned, I used my Cricut to cut this, so I'll link below a tutorial I have for using your Cricut or your Brother Canvas machine when using SVGs. And that'll help you for cutting these. So I've removed the paper backing and I'm just going to press the seam allowance so that it goes against the half of the heart. And I'm going to press this seam allowance so that it goes against the other half of the heart. Just like that. So I've pressed them open. And now I'm going to turn them. And I'm going to press it so that that seam is pressed, and these are to the wrong side. And what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch along this straight edge here. This folded edge is where we're going to top stitch. So using your favorite top stitch length, and you can back stitch here if you want. So top stitch all the way along. Now at the bottom here, you have this little excess overhang, and what you can do is you can take that and you can trim that. So see how there's this excess overhang here? We want to trim that off, and I'm just going to trim it so it's even with the bottom of the heart. Just like that. So now there's no excess overhang at all. Oops, dropped a clip somewhere. I don't know where. Oh, there it is. So I'm going to repeat that process for the second side. So double-sided tape. Press my seams open. Now if your material is not quite as thick or as stiff as mine, you can, oops, just press them open, and you can use your seam roller. You might have a seam roller. I have one, but I always forget to use it, and I just find double-sided tape helps hold everything nicely in place. So get those edges clipped. You may even want to put some clips around the curve of the heart here just to help hold it all in place. There we go. And then clips. There we go. And now I'm going to top stitch along this edge. And Buddy's coming back. She can't stay away. And again, I'll trim that bottom edge so that it's even with my bottom corner here. So it's trimmed. And that's how they both look right now. So you have the two halves folded wrong sides together. We have no raw edges along the one side, because that is where the middle of our wallet is going to be. So no raw edges at all. Now what we need to do, I'm just going to put these to the side, is take your exterior and your contrasting fabric. And again, I just used the same fabric as I used for the exterior. Like I said, I was just putting it through my machine and I was just doing what I could to make this go a little bit faster for me. So we need to use some double-sided tape here. So I'm just going to grab out my double-sided tape and I'm going to place some double-sided tape so that it's not in my seam allowances. And I might be using a lot of double-sided tape, but I just really want to make sure it's stuck together and nothing shifts on me when I'm sewing this. Oops. I can't get that to peel. There we go. Wouldn't peel back on me. The paper itself keeps ripping in half. There we go. All right, so now making sure my tape is stuck, I'm going to remove the paper backings from these ones I just put down. All right, now what we need to do is pick up that off the floor. I don't want the cats playing with that. We need to place this so they are wrong sides together, and you want to ensure you line everything up. So really take your time with this and line everything up. And I'm going to zip my zipper so it's halfway out of the way, halfway down. I'm lining up the top edges. And this was the part that I found I took the most time on when I made my last one, because I really wanted to make sure everything was lined up nicely, because I knew I didn't have edge coat paint, so I wasn't sure if I would color it with my Sharpie like I showed you. And I thought, if I don't, I really want my edges to be lined up really, really perfectly. So just like that. So everything's all nicely lined up. Now there's a mark we need to make on the outer here in the center. So I have to go off camera to go do that because I need to use my ruler, but you're going to make vertical lines from the center here. So see where it's got this flat edge in the center? You're going to go down to the bottom here, this bottom corner, and then from this bottom corner up to this top corner here. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'll come back and we will continue on. And again, you're going to make those marks on the exterior. Okie dokie, so I've made those marks. Now what we need to do is those two middle pieces that we've stitched together, we need to lay them, so you'll see there's my marks, you can see them drawn on. Flip it over and we need to place these on both sides of the wallet. So when I did this, I tried to make sure it was straight, and you can use a ruler here if you want to make sure it's the same distance from these corners here, but I just made sure it was nice and straight. And I was just really taking my time with it. I'm all about it being as straight as I can get it. We're actually almost done, if you can believe that. This is, we're in the final stages. So I can see that this is not the same distance at the top as it is at the bottom. So I'm just going to remove a few clips and I'm going to shift it just a wee bit so that it's straighter. There we go. That looks better. Yeah, that looks good. Right about there. I'm probably being extra picky, but I just really want it to be nice and straight. All right. So get everything all clipped. Make sure everything's all lined up, and I'm probably going to be using what you might consider a lot of clips, but I want to make sure everything is lined up nice and straight and it stays in place. All right, so there's that side. Now we need to repeat that for this side, and I do have that zipper pocket again zipped so it is halfway down. Keeps that zipper, because it's dangly, out of my way when I'm sewing. Just going to see how this looks. Yes. See, and I'm just looking to see how it looks. I really like this wallet. It's really cute. I wish it had more card slots because that's not enough card slots. I have a lot of cards. So it looks good. Now what we need to do is take that snap tab that we made in the beginning, flip it over, snap it in place. And we want to put this where we want it to be when our wallet is closed. So on this one, you can see I kind of went a little bit straight, but you can have it going down at an angle if you want. So coming down like this, if you want it to be like that. So what I'm going to do is just remove a few clips in that area, fold the wallet in half. So you can add a clip if you want to keep it folded in half nicely. So I'm just clipping it together so that everything is lined up. So see, my tops and all the way around are lined up, and you can put it wherever you want your snap tab to go. So I'm just going to slide these two. So wherever you want your snap tab to go, however you want it to look. So you'll see this one's straight. I'm kind of going more on an angle with this one. And then once you have it where you want it to go, you'll slip it between the layers. So I slip it between the layers, not between the layers where the card slot and so when you're looking at this, you're not going between the layers here where your slip pocket will be. You're going between the exterior and the contrast piece. So between the exterior and contrast piece, I'm going to slip it between there. Where I want it. So just like that. Now I find that it feels pretty long back here. So if you want, and you don't like how long it feels back there, you can trim this down a bit. If you want, you can pull your snap tab out. You can make a mark with your chalk, pull your snap tab out and trim it down a little bit so it doesn't go so far into your backing if you want. I need to slip this back in. You don't have to, but you can definitely do that if you want. And now I'm going to push a clip over, and I'm going to unsnap it. Find where those clips are. And then I'm going to place a clip just like that. So I have each clip going at an angle, holding my snap tab in place so it doesn't shift on me when I'm sewing it. So just like that. So that's how it looks right now with our snap tab. So again, our snap tab is on the same side as the zipper pocket at this moment. And I have mine, I bet I have it the same way as I have this one, don't I? No, this one goes out more straight. This one's more angled down. So it's really just dependent on what you want. So now we need to turn it over so it is facing up, and we need to top stitch all around the edge of the wallet using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And you don't have to back stitch here. You can leave long thread tails, pull them through and tie them off. However, I'm going to back stitch because I'm going to start where that first pocket, bottom of the pocket is, and I'm going to back stitch there because I really want to ensure that that pocket doesn't shift, or not shift, but it's really secure when we're using that pocket, because there's going to be a lot of stress in that area. So this here, I'm back stitching, so it's starting where my stitches are. And I'm just making sure everything stays nice and straight. I put my clips on backwards, they're a little bit harder to pull off. And then there's the snap tab, and I'm following the curve of the heart. And as I mentioned earlier, if you want, you can stop with your needle down, pivot a little bit, and then put your presser foot back down and continue stitching along. Ooh, that almost hit me in the face. Is it broken? No. So I'm just stitching all the way around, and I am using a Teflon foot. And I'm back up at the top here, and I'm going to back stitch a couple times just to really ensure that that is nice and secure there. I'm regretting going with black. I should have went with red again, but because you can't see the stitching. And now I'm coming back up to where I started. So I'm just going to back stitch here again, cut my thread tails, trim all my threads. So we have our first row of stitching done. Our wallet is attached. Now we're going to sew a second row of stitching all the way around. So same thing, I'm going to start here, and I am going to back stitch over where these card slots are, and I'm going to go all the way around. I'll back stitch up here again, come across, back stitch here, and back down, back stitch here, and then come across. So I'm actually going to stitch now with this right sides up so I can see it a little bit better. And I just want to make sure I'm using the right seam allowance. I just want to read. So your second set of stitching, now the other thing I forgot to do is I forgot to stitch up the center, but that's okay. What you're going to do here is you're going to then stitch up the center across this top here, back down and back here, and continue stitching. And it says, consider back stitching at the point where the pockets begin and end. And the snap tab area too, you may want to stitch there, because you want to create that extra security. So I'm actually going to stitch up this center right now. I wasn't supposed to stop stitching on my first go. Pivot. And then stitch back down, and I need to getting hung up on something here. Stitch all the way down. I'm just stitching down that line again. And then I'm going to stitch across, and I'm going to back stitch here. And now we have our center. So sorry, we're supposed to continue with that stitching. I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself. You were supposed to continue with that stitching before you back stitch. So you're supposed to come back here, stitch up, across, back down, and then you could stitch across here. But now it's done. I've got my stitching. I don't know if you can see it. Hang on, I'm trying to, there you go. You can kind of see it there. See how you got it? The stitching there, you can see it. And what that does is that kind of creates the spine of your wallet, and you can see it better on this one. Here, I'll open it up. You can see my center stitching better on this one because I used red. And you can see that I did some back stitching up here just to really help reinforce where these pockets are, and I did some back stitching down here to help reinforce where the pockets are. So now we're going to do the final top stitching. So there's a second row of top stitching that we need to do. So we're going to go do that now. And the second row of stitching, there's a measurement from the stitching over that you're going to do. And I'm going to do this stitching with my wallet, this facing the wallet side up, so I can really see where my pockets are and really make sure to back stitch really well there. And again, if you need, use a humper jumper at this spot to really ensure that you're getting over those seams where it's thick if your machine struggles. And again, I'm back stitching at the top. And I'm just following that curve. And I'm back down to where I started, and I'm just going to back stitch over that pocket at the bottom, and then I'm back stitching here. Trim my threads, and I just like the back stitching at the pockets because, like I said, there's a lot of stress on those pockets when you're pulling them open to take your bills out or anything. So I really like how you back stitch there to really help reinforce that area. So once that's done, you can just clip your wallet back in place, and there you have it. Your Heartbreaker wallet is all complete. And if you want, you can edge coat these. Now you'll see that's white, and this one, because I used the marker, is black, so I don't have the edge coat or anything, so that's why I used a marker. So I may go over this with my marker. And if you're finding too, another thing is if anything is off, like right here I can see there's a little area that's off here, you can trim it up to match it up if you want. If you're not edge coating or doing anything, you can trim them up to match it up so that it's nice and even all the way around. or you can just leave it white if you don't want to edge coat it or use a marker, or you can take a marker that's red or whatever color that's a contrasting color and really have some fun with this. So I may just leave this white. I may go and trim up this little area here that's not even. I may trim that up. But other than that, your wallet is done. You have a beautiful Heartbreaker wallet to take out and show off to the world. I do hope you enjoyed sewing along with me and maybe picked up a few tips and tricks along the way. Before you take out your wallet and show it off to the world, don't forget to take some photos and post them in the group, and also use the hashtags that are given in the pattern so that we can easily find your beautiful wallet. And like I said, you've got 1, 2, 3 card slots on this side. You've got 2 card slots on this side, a nice ID wallet, a pocket. So, you know, if you have to show someone your ID, you just flip it open and bam, there it is. And they'll look at this wallet and they'll be like, what a really nice wallet. Where did you get it? And you can proudly say, I made it. So again, this is the Heartbreaker Wallet by K.Azcona Designs. I hope you enjoyed sewing along with me. Have a wonderful day. Bye.